Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the Saïd Business School. For those of you that are not familiar with the place, you are particularly welcome. This Engaging with the Humanities initiative is designed to allow us to work not just with our colleagues in the university in the humanities areas, but also to be able to offer something that will be of interest to the wider public as well as to our staff and students. So I've seen some of you at our previous workshops, and others are here for the first time. To everybody, welcome. This term, we've been stressing the visual arts and also now the performing arts, and trying to draw connections between aspects of what we do in the business school. Not in a too heavy-handed a way, but in a way whereby we can just show that there are natural resonances between the disciplines, that there is no separation necessarily between the humanities and the social sciences, or in this case between music and leadership. I'm here with some colleagues to do the workshop together, and normally someone would introduce the guest speaker, but I am the guest speaker, so I'm introducing myself and my colleagues. Some of my colleagues are going to raise their hands now. Here they all are. Now, my other stealth agenda is I need to separate. Yeah, just go somewhere else. I don't know, you may need to negotiate a trade with somebody. Or here, switch with Thomas. Or no, or anyone. Yeah, yes, have a seat. There we go. And colleagues, do you all have what you need? You have your props? Yes? You have 3 pieces of paper? Okay, great. For a good while now, we've been doing this exercise with visiting executives, and we've also embedded it in our elective on leadership perspectives from the humanities. It's a leadership-oriented activity that draws on the basic circumstances of how teamwork and leadership dynamics occur in a musical performative setting. And I'm not going to spend the time that we have together explaining it. It's perfectly obvious what's going on. And what's much more interesting is just to see it, just to be here as the activity unfolds. Now, in addition to the contribution of my colleagues, I'm also going to need help from some of you. And I'm not going to tell you what we need just yet. But to level the playing field, I'd like to ask each and every one of you, if you could, balancing your coffee and your sandwiches, to stand up. Now, this is not easy, so if you're holding something, don't worry about it. But if you've got a free hand, put it in the air. Put your free hand up in the air. Now, just do what I do, okay? Just do what I do. Okay, now stop. Now, isn't it interesting how incredibly quickly you can get 35, 40 people to snap at the same time? Isn't that interesting? I didn't tell you what we were going to do. I certainly didn't tell you how we were going to do it or why, but you did it. We got coordination out of an uncongealed group by some mechanism. Now, one of the mechanisms is that you're focused on me, and that's, of course, significant. But there were other things going on because of that focus that allowed me to communicate. And that mechanism is what we're going to try to explore today. Why it works, how to optimize it. Now let's try it again. See how well you did that? See how did it happen? How did you know that I was about to stop? How did you know? Because you pretty much all did. How did you know? I slowed down a tiny bit, and then there were other clues, visual clues. What other clues? Raised your hand higher. I did. I altered I altered the circumstance. I changed the pattern. And that, what was the effect of that on you? It focused even more attention. It made you more alert. So then you're looking for a signal. And whatever comes, you could respond. You could have enough information, even though I said nothing. Again, that's part of what we're going to do. How does this signaling work, and how does it have a coordinating effect? And then what is the role of the person up front? And also, what's the role of the others in the system? Okay, so have a seat, be comfortable, go back to your lunches. Now, while you're getting comfortable, let me throw a stone in the untroubled waters of the pond and ask for a volunteer. I need a brave individual who will come up here and stand next to me and do something. Okay. Applause for the volunteer. Okay, now I know you're a woman of many talents, but I'm going to ask you to expand your repertoire. First of all, you know this is something to do with music, but we're not going to ask you to sing.
Oh, that's really good.
Okay, yeah. Now, my colleagues are singers. They're all singers. They are experts, and they know what to do. They're in fact about to sing, and you're about to conduct. Okay? All you have to do is conduct. Simple as pie. The Bach, please. Over to you. So first of all, you're so on brand. Thank you for wearing the Engaging with the Humanities color. It's going to look good on the video. And thank you for being brave. Didn't she do well? Didn't she do well? So, now, do you think you did as well as you possibly could have done? No. No. And what clues do you have that maybe it was less than optimal?
I think in the beginning I forgot that I had to give a big gesture, and I thought I would start with one person, look at one person, and I forgot that actually it's a group. That I would need to find where all the singers are first, and then try to give some kind of group gesture. Okay,
good point. So if if it's a group, you have to engage the group, and if the group knows what to do and you don't, by over-focusing on a specific part of the group, what's happening to the other part of the group? If I'm over here, how engaged am I with Peter, John, Collins? No, not at all. Did you even know he was singing? No. So now, how often in an organization, how often do you know everyone who's working for you? Especially as you get in a much bigger multi-divisional organization, there's no way you can know everyone who's working. So while yes, it's nice if you know where and who everyone is, the reality is you don't, and you still have to lead. So first thing to be conscious of, perhaps in this metaphor, is that we can draw out conclusions about the real world that can stretch a certain distance and have a certain validity. All right, let's have another volunteer. You see, it's unthreatening. The singers make a generally nice noise. Oh, good. We're more also properly branded with pink on your roses. Okay, now, let's begin with the second phrase, ach wie lang. Did you recognize this piece? I'm just curious. You're a cultivated woman. Sounded vaguely familiar.
Germanic.
It's Germanic. Okay, see if you can just go ahead. First go, but then I'm going to ask you to add a little nuance. So start, and then we'll see how we get on. Not bad. Not bad. Very good, in fact. Okay, now, ach, wie lang. It sounded rather long, didn't it? So, do you think preserving the mood, you get a sense of the mood, it's kind of a flowing but a little sad. Can you speed that up a little bit? Because you've got them in control, but if the vehicle speeds up, it's a little harder to control. See if you can speed it up a bit. Okay, really obvious point. You know, if you put more speed into the machine, it's a lot harder to keep it together. So what's the secret? How do you maintain the control you had the first time, but go at a pace that in this case would be more appropriate for the music?
Well, the first time I was more nearly following them than leading, going with the pace. Then once I knew I had to do it faster, then I think I was dictating more, but perhaps not being as effective in the musical.
You were dictating more.
Getting.
So how would you figure out how to improve your signal so that it was more properly understood?
Knowing a bit more of the technique.
It'd be nice. Wouldn't it be nice if we all knew everything we needed to know at all times and in all situations?
Yeah.
Never happens. So, you know, here we are back in the real world. What do you do when you don't know what to do?
Well, you're trying to, I communicate more with the people and get to know beforehand rather than just coming in like that. Preparation and planning. That's
true. Preparation and planning can get you very far, and then no further. Here you are in a situation that you weren't expecting to be in, and yet you still have a responsibility to keep it in control. And you haven't had the luxury of preparation and planning. Is there not some option to coordinate the group and achieve the desired outcome?
Well, by my first goings of my moving my arms, conducting in that way, but obviously slowly. So perhaps that was, part of the developing process and the knowledge. Yeah. But then when you've got to take on board other instructions,
speed
with
it up.
Any job or process that you're needing to produce something, like a report or whatever, and if the luxury of time, that would be great. But then when suddenly, no, you've got to do it quicker, produce it.
You've got a great asset at your disposal, which is you have connected with them. You were able to do it slowly, and they're trusting you. They're following. So bear that in mind. See if you can speed it up, and take one more crack at it. We'll end on a cliffhanger. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so she established some rapport, and then she had at least the potential to get different reactions, to somehow control the situation, except that it really wasn't quite as in control as it could have been, as is immediately evident from the music. You know it doesn't sound quite right, even if you don't know why or how to fix it. So let's keep on in this direction with a new volunteer. Who's our next volunteer? Okay. Since I happen to know that this guy knows a thing or two about music, I'm going to pull a Swiftie on you, and we'll move on to the farmer. Yeah, nope. No instruction manual for you. Actually, before you begin, let me get my copy of this. You don't look like you're enjoying this anymore, is it? You look perfectly happy at first, and then off the rails. So what do you think went wrong? You're a musician. This guy, he's a musician. He knows. What do you think went wrong?
Trying to find, like, sort of breaking it down into phrases and then, like, figuring out. I sort of stopped and then didn't get the sort of, wasn't able to recollect it again next phrase.
Okay, so you analyzed the problem, diagnosed the sickness at the core of the organism, and while you were doing that, what were you not doing?
Maybe not engaging everyone.
That's the word of the day, isn't it? So how would you figure out whether, you said maybe, how would you figure out whether that was the case?
Ask.
Ah, so who knows best in this situation?
Well, sopranos always know best.
Oh, that's true. He's, yeah. He's sitting next to one, yeah.
You're soprano?
Yeah.
May I ask? What was I engaging?
Of course, naturally. What is helpful for all of us is kind of a firm, instructive beat that keeps us on course. I think as long as you do that, that will kind of bring some unity and engage us.
Sounds good.
And it will meet.
Great. How about tenors?
Yeah, just regular. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Feel ready?
I think so.
Fire away. Sorry, my fault. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Aaron. Why did that work better?
I kept steady beat. That was probably the biggest improvement.
Technically, that's the right answer, but give me another answer.
I sort of gestured towards more people this time.
And what was the effect of doing that? Again, that's a technical answer. Give me a real reason.
People were more engaging with sort of
Right there. So why does engaging with the people or the people being engaged with you, why does that matter? Anyone? Anyone?
Not quite an answer to your question, but the other thing was trust the people who are performing, who actually knew an awful lot.
So we had that word trust. The coordination happens not because of, well, they have the instruction manual. They know what it's supposed to sound like. They know. And if they trust you to provide the right signal, then what are they doing then at that point? They're getting on with it. They're doing, everything is as expected. The ambiguity has gone out of the system. And you know, it is, another way to say the same thing is to say people know what's expected of them. People know what to expect from you. And then it works. Now, how often does that happen? How often do we have an instruction manual? How often is there all that trust? And how often does it stay in place? Well, not very often. So there's a certain premium on being able to, A, understand more or less how this works, and then B, figure out how to keep it working or to reestablish it once it's somehow been interrupted. Sound like time for another volunteer? Another volunteer. Oh, I've scared you off now. Thomas, okay. Taking things out of his pockets. Oh my. Okay. All right. So let's go with the. It's a little tricky. Can we start with? Let's just start at the beginning. Let's start at the beginning. No repeat. Start at the beginning. No repeat. Go ahead. Stay put for a second. Okay, now, you look thrilled right now. You look just thrilled. And why do you look so thrilled?
Because I'm a favorite musician.
Yeah, so he's another musician. But really, why is that thrilling you?
Because they knew what they were doing and they all landed at the same time, and it was beautiful.
And it was beautiful, that's true. They look thrilled too. Why do you think they look thrilled? Anybody? Singers? Why do you look thrilled?
You were engaging to watch. It worked. Yeah. They're all
just all involved as well. It makes you feel part of the same thing.
It was working. Others, non-singers, what's the impression you're getting?
Well, conductors often dictate, kind of how the piece comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, he's kind of using his own style to make changes to the song, rather than just going it straight there.
Yeah.
Like up and down.
Yeah. So that is fresh and exciting because it's unexpected but in control. Unexpected but in control. Innovative but working. Somehow that is the magic trick. Now, another thing I happen to know about this gentleman is that he's German. Is that right? You're not Austrian, are you? You're German. No. You're German. Okay. Now, when the American conducted that piece, it sounded quite different than when you conducted it. And it's English music, but it did sound a bit, I don't know, Brahmsian towards the end there. So see if you can put your own interpretation on it. Singers, can we go from Whilst She Was Missing, that's bar 28, and it's an upbeat entrance, offbeat entrance, offbeat entrance, yeah. So I'd just like you to, do what you want with it, because it's clear that you're capable. Now the challenges are, yes.
Why
Thank you, thank you. Such control that we wouldn't even stop without a proper signal. Now, why would I bring out all those points about being German or American or anything like that? What's the point of that? These experts, they know how it's supposed to go. It's English music, it's an English madrigal. There's an expectation around it. And whether that's built into something like organizational culture or some other type of cultural determinism is not the point I'm trying to make. It's simpler. They just know what it's supposed to sound like. So when the leader comes along and has a lot of power and control, he can take it, or in another instance, whatever the leader is, could take the piece away from where it's supposed to go, and they'll follow. But let me just ask the singers, any of them, was that as satisfying to do it as if it were a Mahler symphony, as it is to do it as if it really is a domestic madrigal from the 16th century? It's interesting, but it's not how it's supposed to go. So you'll follow a lead that's very innovative, perhaps, up to a point, and for a reason. But if things get too far from that point, or if the reason drops, like maybe we spent a lot of time under this masterful baton, and we spend 2 years singing English madrigals as if we were singing Mahler, you might get a little tired of it after a while. There's a limit to how much that kind of lead can go, because it's very focused on the one person, the leader. And if part of what we're talking about is being able to sustain this as long as possible, we've identified a potential limit there. All right, next volunteer. Some hard acts to follow. So who's brave? Ta-da! Okay. All right, let's go to the Gibbons. The Gibbons. I will tell you nothing other than off you go. You've done this before. Fess up.
This song, I didn't know.
Conducting.
I've tried before.
Oh, tried. Okay, so that went quite well. Did it go perfectly well?
The beginning, because I didn't know the song, but
yeah.
I just got the clues from the soprano there that kind of showed me how it really goes. So then I picked it up.
Apparently sopranos are indeed the cog pin in any machine. So, all right, so that's very interesting. You got the clue from the soprano. How did you get that clue? What was the clue?
I could see that she was suffering from the... So she showed me her internalized tempo, and then I kind of followed, and then made sense musically, and I continued.
Okay, gosh.
So you react to those definite kind of, you picked something on that.
Okay. So just to overinterpret, because we're in a short time frame, you had the strong leadership instinct, you got the trust very quickly. It was really obvious your gestures are correct. It's all what it's supposed to be. But it started going off the rails quite quickly, and then it got back on the rails quite quickly because you picked up on two-way signaling, not just one-way signaling. And if you're not open to that, it wouldn't have gone back on the rails. Is that
because I didn't know what I'm doing. So I couldn't just go.
Yeah.
I just took some feedback, and then when it was happening, people started smiling. I was confident with the...
So yet again, we never know what we're doing, realistically. If you think you do, how right are you? Partially at best. This is the skill that's worth developing, not the planning skill or even the technical skills to make sure you can set the agenda. The reactive skill is going to get you over the humps that are inevitable. And then virtuous circle, establish more rapport, more trust, more collaborative activity, and ultimately higher performance. Well, I'd like to hear you go on. I rudely interrupted you at, where did we rudely interrupt? 14. Okay, let's just go from beat 2 of 14, so farewell. Very nice. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so some clues. It's a two-way thing. Leadership isn't about the leader alone, and communication isn't about the explicit alone, and all of that has to happen with not just a common sense of expectation and purpose, but with the foreknowledge of uncertainty, it being inevitable. Okay, I've just told you how to do it. So who's next? Oh, gone all shy. We're going to do a beautiful piece of music by John Bennett. Another magical, but a sad one. Is anyone feeling sad today? Anyone feeling poignant? I'm looking at someone's being volunteered. Okay, good. All right. Here comes our next volunteer. Now, just to, again, I'm going to tell you anything, but singers, it's the Bennett. Let's just see how you go. This one's a little different, so let's see how you go. No real surprises now. Oh, very nice. Very nice. Very sad. Okay, now, I'd like you to ask the singers how that was for them.
It was really good, yeah. What you did really well was quickly establish and stick to a regular beat, which meant that we knew exactly where we meant to sing on music. It was really, really good.
It's great communication as well. You engaged or tried to engage with everyone in the group, which came across.
Anybody else, non-singer, pick up on something about all of this? There's something quite distinctive about the way she was doing things, and it helps to explain partly why it went so well. I'm not.
Quite big gestures.
Okay, quite big gestures. What is the significance of her nodding her head, moving her knees? Yeah, so you don't know how much is going on. You were bobbing up and down like one of those funny toys in the back of a car. It was an awful lot of motion. The big gestures, definitely clear, but head nodding, knee bending. Why am I picking up on this?
I think that's really useful because especially if you're like we are at the end, I can even if I'm looking at the music, I can still see that your body is sort of dictating the beat. That's why you were quite embodied in the first one.
her whole self was engaged in this activity, not just her brain.
Responding sort of emotionally and physically to the music or the sound that was being produced.
Two-way. So she. Another thing is you started to look considerably more comfortable after a few bars. Yeah, but terrifying. Yeah. So in any task, you begin in a state of discomfort and uncertainty, but as you get into it, you relax into it, and one of the reasons why it gets easier is that you are better at it. Partly because you're getting more, you're contributing much more of yourself to it, and if that task involves other people, they're picking up on much more information. Now the risk in that is that if you're sending the wrong or confusing signals, it gets worse, but the benefit is that it gets better. And that's another area to be self-conscious of, an area of skill to develop. Not just the coordination among your teammates, but the coordination of all of your signaling and how it's responding to the signaling that you're picking up on. All right, now, another thing I'd like you to do now, do it again, because it's so good. Weep, weep, O mine eyes, and cease not, which when you're a choir boy is just hilarious. Weep, O mine eyes, and see snot. I'm nearly 50 years old and I still can't get past that joke. So make this pathetically sad, okay? It was good, but it could it not, singers, be more pathetically sad, okay? The pathos. Now, to mark this, I'm going to ask the singers to do something, which is as you conduct, and they feel it. They feel this connection. They feel the whole signaling, two-way, full engagement thing. As individuals, they will stand. So if Tom over here feels connected with you, he'll stand. And if he feels disconnected from you, he'll sit back down again. Same for everyone, okay? So see if you can get them all standing. Oh, pretty good, pretty impressive. Okay. It's such an unfair little exercise. But you did very well. Now, obviously, it's really hard to keep eye contact with everybody. So back to the beginning where if you know where people are, you can engage. But you can't always do that. You simply can't. So there must be some way in which successful or effective leaders manage to communicate to people that they can't connect with directly and keep them engaged and pick up information from them. It's a challenge, but it should be a one that's very explicitly faced. Now, when I surfaced it and gave it to you, you went after it with a lot of intention. So what did she look like the second time around as opposed to the first time around? Anybody?
Well, your eyes seem to open more.
There was definitely, yeah, bigger, Got to get attention. So, and that confidence is an interesting thing. Grabbing that bull by the horns. I'm going to do this. And it has a benefit, definitely. It focuses attention. But singers, did the music sound as pathetically sad as it could have done? No. Audience, did it sound like a dying swan? Weep, O mine eyes, and cease not. You know, alas, these your spring tides, methinks increase not. It didn't sound like the end of time, and that's what it can sound like. When a leader is trying really hard and actually achieving quite a lot of explicit goals, as often as not, she's also neglecting some other benefits. And maybe that's important for a short-term reason, but the long-term effectiveness, the long-term engagement are going to suffer eventually. All right, now, what I'd like us to do is one more volunteer. One more volunteer. Who's going to be brave? One more volunteer. Oh, come on. Yes, come forth. Everybody, let us go with in the other book, the one with the table of contents on the front. A piece of music written in Oxford by a Balliol man named Edgar Bairstow. And if we could please begin with the page 2 bar. No, sorry, page 1, the upbeat to the last bar. So, for the King of Kings. Now, your challenge, now that you've chosen to accept it, is to make this emotional. Okay? We're all trained to be cerebral. You wouldn't be here if you weren't really smart. But this is an emotional piece of music. So make it emotional. Mm-hmm. Anyone moved? It's a nice piece. Fairly moving, fairly moving. It's very British, fairly moving. Yes. Aaron, you're not British. Was that as moving as you remember?
I could be a bit more moved.
Could be a bit more moved. Okay, let's see if we can get a bit more moving. Mm-hmm. First of all, if you don't quite know what to do or how to do it, what's the lesson from earlier? Who could help you? So you've got no problem with beat. That's really easy. But maybe they could help you for other things. Now, wait a minute. Wait. So here's a chance to gather some data. Yes, yes, yes.
How could I make it more emotional?
I think, well, there's a bit sort of in the middle where it gets kind of loud, maybe just varying it in terms of dynamic, perhaps a bit more, so showing if you want it to be a bit more emotional and maybe a bit less, or doing something like that might work, just through your gestures and things.
So what would signal for what would indicate to you?
I think just physically, if it was like a bit more large for a bit and then a bit quieter, but still the guitar as well, still keeping the beat going as well.
And I guess in terms of tempo, like, was that speed-wise, is it? more just so used for you as a group, but being more the dynamics that's
Perhaps it might be a way to do it.
So perhaps smaller, specifically smaller gestures for quieter stuff, and larger gestures for louder stuff to get the contrast.
There we go. Expert advice from the expert. Beautiful. Very emotional. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm going to stop in just a second, but one thing that's just really interesting is that, and the good advice from the expert of smaller gestures versus bigger gestures is communicating a lot. But it's also true that your style, your personal style, was very different than your predecessor's style. Hers was whole body. Yours was really tight, I guess is the word, no extra motion, and yet equally in control. Obviously, there are, people have to find their own authentic style, and this can be expressed in complete contradiction to the technical expectations of some other person. What works for one won't work for another. So if you're following a lead, if you're following a predecessor trying to copy what worked for her, if it's not suitable for you, it's going to backfire, and you need to find your own way forward. Sometimes we do an exercise that stresses this, where we'll have 3 conductors go sequentially, and you watch it fall apart in the contrast, but we don't have time. There are other things that we do with this involving maybe 4 conductors, each conducting a different set of the singers, different part of the choir, and watching it fall apart for different reasons. The challenge there is the horizontal coordination across, say, divisional management. There are still other exercises that we do involving the engagement and the connection with not just the singers and the conductor, but the public. But you'll have to either come back to the elective if you're students, or some other occasion if you're not, to see us delve deeper. Questions?
Quick question between the situation today and the real life situation with a professional conductor. The balance is slightly different. At the moment, if you've got a professional conductor, they'll have studied the score for ages, and they'll probably know what they're trying to achieve out of the performers. Whereas today, the imbalance was the other way. So does that affect how things happen?
So it does. And obviously, in real life, outside of a musical performance situation, you rarely have the opportunity to study the score or to know precisely what the playbook is. That's why we take that element out of this exercise. It would be less revealing if you had a real conductor who knew the music and already had a rapport with his people. I could bring a class into the symphony and ask them to observe what they're seeing, but it wouldn't make the same point as getting this, uncertainty and the realism that comes from that. Mm-hmm. Other questions?
The real life thing, it seems to me that in the real life organisational context, many of the biggest challenges is neither the leader nor the players know what the piece of music is. In a sense, they're having to make it up as they go on. How does the analogy, by the way, I think it's a brilliant piece of how to explore leadership, but how do you take that into things like organisational change and dealing with very uncertain and innovative areas?
Very, very good, but big question. And first of all, this is a great opportunity for me to say that this workshop was developed by a colleague of mine, or several, but particularly one, who is a conductor, and he works in large organizations of professionals, not students, although he also works with us sometimes. And the visceral quality of it is the main teaching method. Making someone feel uncomfortable in public in a way that they're actually very well schooled in hiding from others. We all don't know what's going on most of the time, and we're really good at faking it. Similarly, we all understand theoretically that nothing's ever working perfectly, but we spend a lot of time justifying the shortcomings or explaining them away. So in this, you can't hide. And in this, then, there's an opportunity to really focus on the limits of your comfort zone and how to operate beyond that. And then maybe perhaps to then be more honest about your ability to function outside of your comfort zone elsewhere, whatever the context might be. It's the visceral quality that we've discovered from doing this now for a long time, makes this memorable in a way that a theoretical lecture or an academic article or some other form of learning might be less resonant. Any other questions?
It's not a question really, it's an observation that the gentleman here in the red shirt was very interesting when he did his thing, because you said he knew something about music. And I noticed when the first time he did it, which wasn't particularly successful, there was a moment when he was thinking about the music, and I could see him thinking, oh, right, so this is where it's going to go. And he was trying to engage analytically, well, that's what it seemed to me. And that, because he had knowledge and that didn't work, and yet when he decided, okay, I'm going to ignore that bit and just go with the emotional bit and just lead rather than trying to be a musician, that actually worked much better, which...
That's a really good point. I mean, I guess it's a point you could make in a lot of ways. When you stop trying, but surrender yourself to other resources than just your conscious intellectual understanding of the situation, you do find you do have other resources. The trust of your team, the fact that the performance metrics are perhaps more emotional and less intellectual, so you should work to them. And surrendering yourself to that can be very hard, especially for those of us that are trained in the ways that most of us are trained or are training. But it sometimes makes much the biggest difference. And having the courage to do it, well, it takes more to do that than to stand up here in front of your friends and make a fool of yourself waving your arms around. But this is a good way to start. And so that's a very welcome observation. Thank you. There's another hand up over here. Oh, let's go with our conductor first, and then Laurel.
Okay, let's go to a request. Could you demonstrate one example of a perfect?
I will, in 2 seconds. Let me answer Laurel's point, and then
so my question is, watching people conduct, part of this is about the tempo, but part of it is about creating dynamic engagements, getting people emotionally connected to the piece through, your volumes. But how does that translate then into reality? How do CEOs or leaders in a company actually create a dynamic environment that gets people emotionally engaged without upsetting them too much?
So I'm not the expert on that, but there are others who do know a lot about it. I do think that the lesson of this exercise is to highlight the importance of that, of understanding the importance of the fact that we're humans. And we need to be managed in ways that are not merely mechanical, but we have spent some 50 years over-privileging certain types of managerial understanding and practice. And as scholarship evolves in new directions, we can add to our toolkit in ways that are perhaps more appropriate. And understanding how to implement that is a large part of why it's important to at least start trying through exercises like this. One more point, and then, let me have a point on that, and then I'll get to you.
Well, I was just going to add to that. A lot of the stuff that we've actually just talked about in the last hour is exactly what you do as a reader, through communication, getting to know your people, listening to people, responding to your people. That's how they do it.
So it's communication, response, engagement, and finding your own way to do those things. And for some it isn't easy, but for those to whom it comes more naturally, they should be charged with such responsibilities. Quick question, and then we'll do the good example.
I was doing it, and I think I was working I was the second one to go, so she was brave with me. And I was conscious then of the people sat at the periphery, not to forget them for bringing them in, because of course it's easier with the ones in front. So I don't know whether you overcompensate or what, but that's something that
really good point. You know, so spatial or locational matters matter. Because that can create or enable or destabilize engagement. And a good point about the standing up exercise was that as you engage one, you lose another. And maybe you have to be comfortable with not being able to do it all perfectly all the time, but equally you have to be comfortable with being capable of doing it some of the time. And fortunately for us, we have in our midst a very fine conductor who can show us how to do it. Tom, if you would. And shall we do the parry, everybody? This piece of music, My Soul, There Is a Country, by Charles Hubert Hastings Parry, an Exeter man. Anyone here from Exeter? No? He's also the man that graced the country and the Conservative Party with Jerusalem, that great anthem of English patriotism. But this piece was written towards the end of his life, so it's appropriate that we sing it at the end of our workshop. So after we're finished, we'll be done. And thank you very much for your involvement and your attention. I hope you found it interesting. But now to sign us off, Tom will conduct My Soul, There Is a Country. Thank you all very much. Hope you enjoyed it.